I wish to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Health Government Operations Subcommittee on Government Operations and Health Facilities. The first thing I want to announce is that the last shall not be first. That is, House Bill 1353 will not be discussed, will not be considered at this meeting. It will be considered at a subsequent meeting of this subcommittee. House Bill 1353, Omnibus Procurement Reform Act, Delegate Wilson's bill, will not be taken up at today's meeting. Okay, we will begin with House Bill 325, State and Local Procurement Payment Practices. This is Delegate Barnes's bill with amendments. Council, can you explain what the amendments do?
Sure. The bill as originally introduced shortened the time frame within which state agencies must make payments under procurement contracts. The time in which the interest on unpaid balances began to accrue. And the bill also required counties and municipalities to adopt payment policies that were consistent with the state's requirements. The amendments which I circulated from Delegate Rosenberg cut language from the bill that would have applied to local government payment practices, shortened only the time frame for interest to begin accruing on unpaid invoices, but to a lesser degree to 37 days from 45 days, and tasks DLS with studying payment processing timeframes and the fiscal impact of further shortening these timeframes. The purpose of these amendments are to address the several $1 million fiscal note that was on the original bill.
And do we have a sense of what the fiscal note would be with these changes? Other than it makes it within the limit.
We've gotten some fiscal notes, but they don't issue revised fiscal notes until the amendments are adopted and the bill passes third reader.
But it makes it substantially lower.
It makes it substantially lower. We don't have a specific quantifiable number though.
Okay. Is there discussion? Yes, Delegate Zaliga. Can't hear you. You're muted. You're new to this, I know.
Thank you. I know. I'm so new. I can't remember to unmute. Thank you. I can't wait till we're back in person and we don't have to mute and unmute each other. Regarding the fiscal note, I believe what that means is the state is literally not paying their contractors. So, the fiscal note is only that high because they're not paying their subcontractors or contractors. So, I'm fine with changing this. It just seems like we should be doing more. We struck all the language on page 2 from lines 1 to 4, where we were just saying that the payment for goods and services should be within a reasonable amount of time. And so, if this is all we can get out of it, but Chair, I hope you'll instruct the people that we're going to come back and really change this, because it is a hardship when the contractor, the subcontractors performed the work, they paid for their materials, they paid for their labor, they paid for everything, and the state is literally holding their money. It just makes it really hard for especially minority and women-owned businesses, newer companies to get going. So that would be my discussion. Thank you.
Well, I very much appreciate what you said, because I was about to say, if I may paraphrase Arnold, we'll be back. And so if this is not adequate, we will be able, another member, Delegate Barnes or a member of this subcommittee can put a bill in next year for us to see what the impact is. So I appreciate your sentiments.
The study from DLS is also tasked with determining what the payment timeframes are.
Oh, so there will be a report to it. There will be a report to it. Fine. Okay.
And I also wanted to point out, I forgot to mention that there is an error in the amendment that I circulated. The top line on page 3, line 1, that should have. one that should have been struck along with the rest of that provision.
Okay, is there a motion on the amendments? From someone who is unmuted, preferably.
Move
So
the
moved.
amendments.
Thank you. No
Second.
objection. The amendments are adopted. Motion on the bill as amended.
Move the bill as amended.
Thank you, Delegate
Second.
Kerr. Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? There are none. Thank you. House Bill 479, Commemorative Days Tuskegee Airmen. Council.
This bill requires the governor to annually proclaim the fourth Thursday in March as Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. The proclamation must urge educational and cultural organizations to observe Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day through appropriate and informative programs and activities. And there are no amendments on this bill.
Is there a cross file?
There is, and it is passed through third reader in the Senate.
Pass the Senate. Okay. Is there a motion on the bill?
Move favorable. Move the bill.
It is moved favorable. When there is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. House Bill 484, Duchesne Day, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Council?
This bill requires the governor to annually proclaim October 5th as Duchesne Day, a festival originating in Nepal that celebrates and symbolizes victory of good over evil. There are also no amendments on this bill. There is a cross file that has not yet moved in the Senate.
Discussion? I see no hands. A motion? Is there a favorable motion?
So moved.
So moved by
Second.
Delegate Landis and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that one is also unanimous. House Bill 516, St. Mary's County Human Relations Commission, Equal Treatment. Council?
This bill requires the St. Mary's County Human Relations Commission, in addition to its
Maybe we're just gonna,
to encourage and ensure equal treatment of all people without regard to sexual orientation or gender identity and with respect to discrimination in education. The bill also replaces statutory language referring to racial tensions with language referring to tensions within the community. There's no cross file. This bill was a delegation bill supported by the St. Mary's County delegation. And no amendments.
No amendments. Is there discussion?
move the bill.
Bill is moved favorable, seconded.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Public Safety, House Bill 581, Public Safety, Fire Rescue, or Emergency Services. Council?
This bill prohibits, with certain exceptions, the disclosure of the contents of any written or oral communication regarding a peer support counseling session by a peer support specialist or peer support participant. By October 1st, 2024, the Behavioral Health Administration must develop a report on best practices and professional standards for a peer support counseling program. The BHA must make the published report and a list of peer support specialist training programs publicly available on its website. I circulated amendments from the sponsor that match the bill to the Senate cross file, which requires BHA to consult with the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems in developing a report on best practices and professional standards for peer support counseling programs. I'll note this is slightly different than the amendment requested in the MIMS testimony. They had suggested that they do this instead of BHA, and this makes them consult instead.
And is that okay with the sponsor?
This amendment came from the sponsor, and as I mentioned, it matches it to the Senate cross file,
Okay, thank you.
which
Is there
has
just,
passed the Senate.
okay. Is there a discussion? Is there a motion? I need a
So
favor.
moved.
Thank you. All those in favor of the favorable, please say aye.
It's amendments.
Oh, sorry, all those in favor of the amendments. Thank you. There is no objection to the amendments. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Move the bill as amended.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the bill as amended on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
There is no one opposed. Okay. House Bill 612.
This bill
Council.
requires the Governor's Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing to maintain an estimate of the number of deaf and hard of hearing individuals in the state and include the current estimate in the annual report that is submitted to the Governor and the General Assembly. The office must also identify and facilitate opportunities for underinsured individuals to gain equal and affordable access to hearing aids. There are no amendments on this bill. And no cross-file.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Move the bill.
Bill is moved. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Favorable.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
let me just say, I have an earlier email that has 3 bills. I don't have this agenda. It's just been very hard to follow along with what's going on. Just for the record, I don't want to stop anything, but this is just, frustrating. Thank you.
I apologize. There was a later email, I believe. Is it possible to, Council, can you have that sent out again right now, or?
Sure, I can send it again. There
you send it to my
were 2
laptop? I'd
emails with an
appreciate it.
updated agenda from last night, and then the agenda is also on the General Assembly website, but I'll send it again just a moment.
All right, I can go to the website. It's fine.
We apologize. Sorry. Let me know when you have it, Delegate Hill.
I have it
Just
now.
send
Thank you.
it to Delegate Hill, your laptop address.
I have
Okay,
it. Thank you.
you've got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Council. House Bill 663, State Government Notarial Acts.
This bill increases the maximum fees for an original notarial act and performance of a remote notarial act, repeals an exception to remote notarization provisions that applies to wills and trust instruments, clarifies the application of specified requirements for credential analysis and identity proofing as they pertain to remote notarial acts, establishes requirements and procedures for remote notarial acts involving a tangible record, specifies procedures by which a notary public may administer an oath or affirmation to a remotely located individual, authorizes the Secretary of State to adopt regulations prescribing the methods for reasonable confirmation of a tangible record, and makes clarifying changes to communication technology requirements applicable to remote notarizations. The bill also specifies that the notarization of any document under the requirements of specified executive orders authorizing remote notarizations must be deemed valid if the notarization occurred during the time those orders were in effect. There aren't amendments on this bill. I know that Delegate Kaiser has requested a couple of co-sponsor amendments, but unfortunately we aren't doing co-sponsor amendments unless there are other amendments on the bill. So I've got those ready in case there are any other changes to this, but the Senate has passed this bill with no amendments, with the exception of, I believe they did put some co-sponsors on. But
Move the bill.
Second.
Discussion on the bill? Okay, all those in favor of the bill?
I have a question.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Delegate Hill.
Yeah. I just have a note, maybe Delegate Kaiser can address. I know that we went from 25 to 50, and that's been left that way. But the note I have is people don't get a choice about whether to have something notarized. So they're captive. They get no choice at all. And so whatever is being charged, and I know this gives the secretary some flexibility in determining basically what the maximum charge is and not the floor. But I wanted that to be, just brought up here, that there are plenty of people who absolutely have to get things notarized and may have a problem getting it done. Although I would note that certainly banks and some other public institutions, if you happen to be able to afford to have an account, will notarize things at no charge. And maybe Delegate Szeliga has something to say, or Delegate Kaiser has something to say about that.
Well, thank you, Delegate Hill, and thank you, Chair Rosenberg.
It's allowed to go up to, and I think you said the wrong numbers. It's allowed to go from 4 up to 25.
Okay.
And certainly, and a fee can be waived at any point. I think part of the concern was that a business, a law firm, or another place that uses remote notarization is paying some other company more than $4 to get that done. So in fact, the current fee schedule is harming business in this way. And again, the Secretary of State's office has just been given the authority.
Very good. Thank you.
Delegate Hill, could you visualize yourself, if that's the right term? Because I couldn't see your arrow, your hand, because you were darkened. Thank you. Okay, so there are no amendments to House Bill 663. Is there a motion? I believe there was.
Move the bill as amended, or move the amendments.
No.
Move the
There are no
amendment.
amendments.
Move the bill as unamended.
Move the
The
bill
bill
as
has already been
unamended.
moved.
Move the bill.
Time to vote.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? It is unanimous. Okay. House Bill 767, which is my bill, emergency procurement contracts. Council, please explain the amendments.
This is an emergency bill that limits the contract term for an emergency procurement. And it's originally drafted to 6 months and prevents an emergency contract from being renewed after that 6-month term expires. If there are any unmet needs after the term, a procurement officer must use a procurement method other than emergency or expedited procurements to award a new contract. I circulated amendments for this bill from Delegate Rosenberg that extend from 6 months to 12 months, the time limit on the contract term for emergency contracts, allows a unit to renew an emergency contract only with approval from the Board of Public Works, and allows a unit to use expedited procurement in addition to the other procurement methods other than emergency procurement to extend any unmet need from the emergency procurement.
Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification. So if the procurement officer does not approve it, within 48 hours, it's considered approved. But could the Board of Public Works currently approve an emergency procurement contract before those 48 hours is up if the procurement officer does not approve it?
Does this bill speak to that? This is about the renewal of
No,
such a contract.
Yeah, this is about the term length for the emergency procurement, which is presumably
Yeah, I was-
under the normal procedures, and then renewal for that procurement contract.
Okay.
And what I was trying to do with the amendments, I heard from the departments in trying to meet our objective of having review of such a contract because of the problems that arose recently with regard to several emergency contracts, but not impose an undue burden on the process. So really putting the burden on the Board of Public Works.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Mike, I appreciate your nodding your head affirmatively. Thank you, Mike Haley. All right. Delegate Saliga.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Why did we go from 6 months? I mean, if it's an emergency, that I liked your original bill. It was, I mean, you
Wow.
doubled it. I'm sure Mike wanted extra time, but
That's fair to say.
a year seems like a long time for an emergency contract, but
That was we felt that was an appropriate compromise. And
all right,
don't
well,
know what to
hopefully
say.
we won't. I mean, how often do we have emergencies, Mike? I know that the COVID was obviously, what's before us, but how often do we have emergencies?
They happen too frequently. The majority of them, however, I'll categorize them as one and done. There's a roof leak, there's a boiler repair. That's the nominal emergencies. They're done probably within 30 days. The COVID, of course, went on for a period of time. There's a lot of legislation that came out of that. It's all good. The concern with the 6 months versus the year was if we get into another situation that's not a roof repair or a boiler repair, it may take a little bit of time to discover that we need more time. And with a 6-month cap, that doesn't allow adequate time to competitively procure a final solution. So within the year, we think we'll have time to know whether or not we need more time, as well as do the competitive procurement to satisfy the situation. The fallback is if even a year's not enough time, then we would be required to proactively get the Board of Public Works approval to continue the emergency until such time as the procurement was finished. The last thing I want to say is the whole point in doing an emergency is to mitigate whatever the circumstance is as soon as possible and get back to the normal course of business. But there are, as we learned with COVID, there are certain situations that are not satisfied so quickly as we would like.
Mike, to meet a 6-month deadline, when would you have to start the process of renewing the contract?
So it depends on what the nature of the scope of work is. If we're getting services, typically, that's not just a simple bid, that's a request for proposal process. That could take 6 months alone. I would say 4 to 6 months is probably typical. Sometimes they go much longer. If we get into complex IT procurements, sometimes they take a year. So it kind of depends. We were just concerned about the 6 month. There just wasn't enough room there. If it took us a few months to figure out, we would not be able to solve or mitigate the emergency, and we had to do a competitive procurement, it wouldn't allow enough time to finish that.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion on the amendments?
Yes.
Motion is to move the amendments?
Move the amendment.
No objection. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
So moved.
So moved. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one is opposed. Okay, thank you. 1107, Maryland Sign Language Interpreters Act. This is our final bill for today.
This bill establishes a regulatory framework for the licensure of individuals who provide sign language interpretation services in the state. The State Board of Sign Language Interpreters is established in the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Beginning January 1st, 2024, an individual must be licensed by the board before providing sign language interpretation services in the state. The Sign Language Interpreters Fund is established to collect associated revenues and pay for the board's costs. In fiscal 2024 only, the governor must appropriate $100,000 in general funds to the board, and subject to the evaluation and reestablishment provisions of the Maryland Program Evaluation Act, the bill terminates July 1st, 2032. There are no amendments on this bill. And there
Any
is
discussion?
a file that has not moved yet in the Senate.
Is there any discussion on the bill? Is there a motion on the bill?
So moved.
A favorable motion? Any
Second.
debate? All those in favor of the bill say aye.
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 There is no one in opposition. Okay, that concludes our business for today. But let me remind everybody, we start working on cybersecurity tomorrow. Okay, and that is, our task there is to get that to the floor and to the Senate by crossover. Delegate Saliga.
When do you think we're going to work on the omnibus bill that we didn't get to today?
Lindsay, can you speak to that, or you can't at this point?
We're waiting for some additional amendments from the sponsor, so I can't speak to what the timeline for those is.
Okay, thank you.
But you will note that the sponsor happens to chair another committee. We are adjourned. On that note, we are adjourned. For those of you who, like myself, are on the Public Health Subcommittee, 15 minutes, is that the deal? Lindsay, to the best of your knowledge?
I bet everyone should just go as expeditiously as they can, because I know you have a long agenda in that subcommittee as well.
Because the sooner we do that, the sooner we vote in the full committee with one intervening event. Thank you all very much.